Good morning. We are here today to discuss the most iconic figure in modern political and social thought, Karl Marx. Human domination of nature for the purpose and securing and expanding of productive capacities that service capitalism is another way to understand the ecological concern. As nature is burdened with more and more productive demand from the world of industrial enterprise, labor, manpower or workforce that produces for consumption of society comes to combine with nature as primary ingredients of this productive greed. We inherit an understanding of how labor and nature come to combine in order to provide for capital's expanding productive agenda from the works of Karl Marx. In this module, we'll discuss the key concepts of Karl Marx thought and the relevance of it to ecological perspectives. Karl Marx was born in Germany. He got a PhD in philosophy and also went on to study law in Germany. Thereafter, he moved to France and met Friedrich Engels in 1844 in Paris, and they went on to become long-term intellectual collaborators. And it was with Engels that he started studying political economy and later got involved in communist organizing in England. And a lot of his works were published in Russia posthumously after his death. Marx analyzes the state of capitalist production and the economic structure supporting it as having evolved in stages of history. These stages can be understood through the rubric of productive forces and production relations. Production relations in each phase carries the struggle between classes, especially in a way that the class that owns and controls the productive forces rules. Productive forces would be the factors of production: land, labor, machines, fertilizer, monetary capital. Classes respond to each other's structural location through the act of production. This act of production is the fundamental explanatory rubric of history, materialism, or that which corresponds to matter, as opposed to the work in the realm of thought or ideas. All history follows the pattern of struggle between classes over the control of modes of production, and thus proceeds in a dialectical way. As productive forces grow, these class relations change and the economy moves to a new stage. This happens through conflict, through class struggle. In modern capitalism, the most important form of struggle is between the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. This pattern of struggle and growth is analyzed by Marx as dialectical materialism. A key terminology in Marx's work are use value and exchange value. Use value derives from the physical characteristic of the commodity. Exchange value derives from the value that it is accorded in the market of commodities through the mechanism of price. Use value is intrinsic to the thing itself and unrelated to its status as commodity or relations of production. It is realized in the consumption of the thing. For example, a fruit is plucked off a tree and eaten. Its use value is realized. When it is packaged, loaded on a ship, served as part of dessert at a restaurant in a faraway country, its value combines with labor in several quarters. In plantation economy, shipping and cargo economy, and restaurant economy to determine its exchange value as the price of the dessert. As the thing from the nature serving as raw material combines with human labor to determine a marketable commodity, the surplus value, which is rendered as profit for the capitalist, is derived from the extra-human element of labor which cannot be priced. It is this extra-human element that ensures the working of the principle of labor theory of value and counts as surplus value that Marx derives from David Ricardo, but complicates. Marx conceptualizes the commodity as a symbol of capitalist society. He examines the inherent usefulness of the thing that makes it attractive for consumption, its use value, and its relative value in the commodity market, exchange value. Marx asks the question, how do intrinsic values of two different things come to compare with each other in order to make them comparable as an equal magnitude in the time of exchange? It is their reducibility to this third thing, money, that makes two things compare in their intrinsic characters. Money becomes the absolute equivalence that purports to be able to translate all things in its language and churn out their exchange value. Marx says Further, that commodities are carriers of the abstracted, congealed form of human labor that goes into making the commodity. Their exchange values reduce the diverse expressions of labor into a homogeneous form that can be measured in terms of exchange value at the time of exchange between things. The other concept that Marx proposes that we must discuss is alienation. This congealed form of labor that gets imprinted on the body of the commodity is an abstraction of the personhood of the worker, which makes the charismatic form of the commodity and strips the worker of some of his intrinsic personhood. In the capitalist mode of production, the worker is stripped of his prerogative of creative expression of humanness through the act of producing. The early Marx expresses this humanistic lament at the tragedy of the commodity. The product of labor is labor which has been congealed in an object which has become material. It is the objectification of labor, he says in the Economic and Philosophic Manuscripts of 1844. This physical loss that the worker experiences when he confronts the product of his labor, the commodity, a thing independent of itself that he has no longer any control over, causes what Marx calls estrangement or alienation of labor. Its passing into the hands of capitalists now informs his permanent state of bondage to the capitalist system of production. In the corpus of Marx's work, society has been seen as a combination of base and superstructure. Base consists of material substratum on which production relations are built. All productive forces in a society form the base. Other relations and ideas that society builds on the base are known as superstructure. Culture, morality, aesthetics, political institutions come in the ambit of superstructure. Fundamentally, Marx has a materialist conception of nature, a clear idea of which we get in the work of John Bellamy Foster. This materialism, as an explaining mechanism for social history, has an intimate relationship with nature. The process of natural history defines human materialism. The base-superstructure categorical divide has been increasingly diluted by the critical Marxists of the 20th century. But the connection to the natural physical world has been continually recognized in understanding the limits of productive existence. Therefore, following Foster, we may understand Marxist productivist thinking of social relations and class antagonism has deep links with the physical characteristics of the world in which these relations are borne out. Foster addresses the criticism ecologists target at Marx for taking the Promethean point of view or showing human history as pro-industrial and anti-ecological. He shows that Marx's ecological sensitivity was not one of reducing ecology to values that one must propound. Marx's ecological perspective was a fundamental sensitivity to the nature of human relations with nature, that this metabolic relation was a fundamental, through which nature was brought into social productive fold, was at the core of any ecological understanding of human society. Marx's materialism was instructive in providing the view that ecology is not a matter of spiritualism or philosophical idealism. A complex materialist view of human metabolic relations with nature was required to understand how capitalism impacted ecology, or how an ecologically protective viewpoint could be taken on capitalism's interaction with nature. From basic nutrition to agriculture to feed for cattle and ultimately providing the base of raw materials for industry, all human surviving and sustaining force requires in some form the metabolic interaction with nature. Environmental social science, Foster points out, is mired in the compartmentalization of anthropocentrism and ecocentrism. Foster and his economist ally, Paul Burkett, make crucial interventions in showing the ecological lens in Marx with sharper analysis of Marx's materialism. The earth as a universal human instrument becomes tied to all forms of human endeavor, given that human endeavor is seen as driven towards production. A farmer needs a plow and seeds, a trucker needs a truck, a tailor needs thread. These are all components of nature that lend themselves to instrumentalization through the human intention of production. Nature is metabolized by human labor under the governance of capital as a fundamental feature of production. Marx also considers the effect of production as free gifts of nature that the capitalist does not have to rent. The main natural goods whose scarcity impacts production are land, mineral, raw materials, potable water. These goods have to be paid for as rent, licensing fees, and such like. The ecological crisis fundamentally arises as capital's infinitesimal thirst for surplus encounters the limited nature of nature's resources. Marx's theorization of value encompasses attention to the pressures and threats of natural resources through capital's program of expansion across the globe. Marx shows that the logic of capital takes for granted human domination of nature for the generation of surplus value. To conclude, it must be remembered that more than anything else, nature exists as a resource base for capital's exploitation. And the ecological perspective must not take ecology as a simple value regime, but a preserve of understanding human production relations. This understanding is sharpened in Marx's thought. The drive for surplus is intrinsic to the working of capital. It is achieved primarily in applying human labor to nature under the governance of the capitalist. Capital endlessly looks for new opportunities for exploitation of labor and nature to increase the rate of profits. This logic poses fundamental ecological problems given the finitude of natural resources like land and minerals. Advanced capitalism creates post-industrial ecologies, locales and natural resources depleted or degraded due to exhaustion from industrial use. These ecologies are often taken over by urban industries like real estate, hotels, gated communities, or luxury like parks and gardens, which generate artificially high rent. With that, we'll close our discussion on Karl Marx.